I heard them before they saw me. Playing entrepreneur on Instagram, my brother Marcus said, his voice carrying through the half-open conference room door. So embarrassing. She posts these little motivational quotes like she's some kind of CEO. The executives around the table laughed. I recognized the sound, the eager, sycophantic laughter of people who wanted to stay on the boss's good side. She actually thinks she's a businesswoman, Marcus continued. Meanwhile, Dad and I built a real company. A $180 million company. I pushed open the door and smiled politely. Sorry I'm late. Traffic. The laughter died. But not the smirks. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from the chairman of Westbrook Industries board. Ms. Walker, your 81% stake confirms tomorrow's leadership changes. The board is prepared to proceed. I didn't look at it. Not yet. My name is Natalie Walker. I'm 29 years old and I've spent my entire life being underestimated. Marcus was born 3 years before me into a family that had already decided what success looked like. My father, Raymond Walker, had built Walker Logistics from a single warehouse into a regional shipping empire. By the time I arrived, the narrative was set. Marcus would inherit the business. I would inherit whatever was left. My first memory of understanding this came when I was 5 years old. My father had taken Marcus to the warehouse for Bring Your Son to Work Day. I'd begged to come too. I remember standing in the kitchen in my favorite dress, the blue one with the white flowers, asking my mother why I couldn't go. That's for boys, sweetie, she said, not looking up from her magazine. Marcus needs to learn the business. You need to learn how to support your future husband. I was 5. I didn't know what a future husband was. I just knew I wasn't allowed to go to the warehouse. When I was 9, I started my first business. I collected empty cans from the neighborhood, crushed them and sold them to the recycling center. In 3 months, I'd made $127.43. I kept meticulous records in a notebook I'd decorated with stickers. My father found the notebook when he was looking for something in my room. What's this? He asked, flipping through the pages of my careful accounting. Pie business, I said proudly. I made $127. He laughed. Not cruelly, more like the way you'd laugh at a dog wearing a tiny hat. That's cute, Natalie. But real business isn't about collecting cans. He tossed the notebook back on my desk. Leave the business stuff to Marcus. He's got a head for it. Marcus, at 12, had spent the summer playing video games. But he had a head for business because he was a boy named Walker. I stopped showing my father my notebooks. I didn't stop keeping them. At 14, I applied for a summer internship at a local marketing firm. I lied about my age, saying I was 16. I got the position, unpaid of course, and spent 8 weeks learning everything I could about brand positioning, market research, and consumer psychology. When my father found out, he was furious. But not because I'd lied about my age. You embarrassed me, he said. The owner called to say how impressed he was with my daughter. I had to pretend I knew you were working there. He shook his head. You could have gotten a real job. Something appropriate. Instead, you're playing pretend in an office. I learned a lot, I said quietly. About marketing. About how companies. Natalie. My father's voice was tired. I don't need you to learn about companies. I need you to focus on school, find a nice husband, and let your brother handle the family business. That's your job. I was 14. My job was to be decorative. I stopped talking to my father about my ambitions. I didn't stop having them. I graduated high school with a 4.1 GPA and acceptance letters from 7 universities. I chose the one furthest from home, a small private college in California with a strong entrepreneurship program. My parents came to my graduation reluctantly, leaving early to attend Marcus's promotion celebration at Walker Logistics. He's VP of Operations now, my mother explained. It's a very big deal. Marcus was 21 and had been handed a position he hadn't earned. I was 18 and had earned a full scholarship. But his promotion mattered more. College changed everything. I met Elena Vasquez in my freshman entrepreneurship seminar. She was a senior, brilliant and driven, with a startup already generating $50,000 in annual revenue. She became my mentor, my business partner, and eventually my best friend. You have something most people don't, Elena told me during our first meeting. You've been told no so many times that you don't hear it anymore. You just see problems that need solving. We launched our first company together, a social media analytics platform, the summer after my sophomore year. Elena had the technical skills. I had the vision. We bootstrapped with $12,000 in savings and a lot of caffeine. We sold it 2 years later for $8.3 million. I didn't tell my family. I took my share, $3.7 million after taxes and Elena's cut, and reinvested it. I learned about venture capital, about private equity, about the quiet ways that real money moved. I built relationships with investors who valued discretion over flash. By 25, I'd co-founded 3 more companies. 2 were moderately successful. 1, a logistics optimization platform called Streamline Systems, was extraordinary. We'd identified inefficiencies in regional shipping networks that the industry had overlooked for decades. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd built a better logistics company than my father's, without his knowledge or his help. When Streamline Systems was valued at $94 million in its Series C round, I'd begun quietly acquiring shares in my father's company. Not directly, that would have been noticed. Through holding companies, through proxies, through the patient accumulation of stock from shareholders who didn't realize what they were selling. By 28, I owned 81% of Walker Logistics through a shell company called Apex Capital Holdings. The company my father had built, the company he was training Marcus to inherit, the company I'd been told was for boys. It belonged to me. My father didn't know. Marcus didn't know. The board knew only that their majority shareholder was a private investment firm with deep pockets and minimal interference. Tomorrow that would change. The family business dinner was Marcus's idea. He'd sent the invitation 3 weeks ago, insisting that the whole family gather at Walker Logistics headquarters to celebrate a major announcement. I'd known what the announcement was before I opened the envelope. My contacts on the board had kept me informed. Marcus was being promoted to CEO. My father was stepping down. The succession that had been planned since Marcus was born was finally happening. What Marcus didn't know was that his promotion required board approval. And what the board didn't know, not all of them anyway, was that their majority shareholder had very specific opinions about who should run the company. I arrived at Walker Logistics at 6 p.m., wearing a simple dress that could have been designer or department store. My Instagram followers would have recognized it as the latter. I'd posted about the brand last week, part of my affordable professional fashion series that Marcus found so embarrassing. What Marcus didn't understand was that my Instagram wasn't playing entrepreneur. It was market research, consumer engagement, brand building. The 2.3 million followers I'd accumulated weren't accidents, they were assets. But that was a revelation for another day. The conference room was packed when I arrived. My father sat at the head of the table, looking every inch the patriarch preparing to pass his crown. Marcus sat at his right hand, practically vibrating with anticipation. My mother sat at my father's left, beaming at Marcus like he'd already saved the world. The executives filled the remaining seats, 12 men in expensive suits, all of whom had looked right through me at every family gathering for the past decade. And then there was me, seated at the far end of the table near the door. The afterthought. The Instagram girl. Now that everyone's here, Marcus said, shooting me a pointed look, I have an announcement. My father stood, clearing his throat with the gravity of a man about to deliver a State of the Union address. As you all know, I've been running Walker Logistics for 32 years. I built this company from nothing. I poured my blood, sweat, and tears into making it what it is today, a $180 million enterprise that employs over 2,000 people. The executives nodded solemnly. My mother dabbed her eyes. But the time has come for me to step aside, my father continued, to pass the torch to the next generation. And I couldn't be prouder to announce that my son Marcus Walker will be taking over as CEO. Applause erupted. Marcus stood, accepting the congratulations with false humility. The board will vote to confirm the appointment tomorrow, my father added. But it's just a formality. Marcus has been preparing for this moment his entire life. I kept my expression neutral. My phone buzzed again in my pocket. Of course, Marcus said, his eyes finding mine across the table. Not everyone in the family has the same business instincts. Natalie here is still trying to figure out how Instagram works. More laughter. The executives didn't even try to hide their amusement. Playing entrepreneur on Instagram, Marcus continued, warming to his audience. So embarrassing. She posts these little motivational quotes like she's some kind of CEO. He shook his head. Meanwhile, Dad and I built a real company. I smiled politely and said nothing. The dinner was served at 7 o'clock, catered by the same restaurant my father had used for every corporate event since I was a child. I ate without tasting, my attention divided between the performative conversations around me and the series of messages accumulating on my phone. Eleanor Chin, chairman of Walker Logistics Board. Ms. Walker, the proxy votes are confirmed. Your 81% stake ensures the outcome. Robert Martinez, my legal counsel. Documentation ready for tomorrow. Board has been notified of majority shareholder attendance. Elena Vasquez, you okay? Call me after if you need to debrief. I didn't respond to any of them. Not yet. At 8 o'clock, my father stood again to make another toast. He spoke about legacy, about tradition, about the importance of family. He spoke about Marcus's natural leadership abilities and his instinctive understanding of the business. He didn't mention me once. I watched my brother accept the praise with a smile that bordered on smug. He'd spent his entire life being told he was special and he'd never thought to question it. He didn't know that Walker Logistics had been struggling for 3 years. He didn't know that the board had been quietly concerned about his leadership of the operations division. He didn't know that 4 major clients had threatened to leave in the past 18 months, or that the company's profit margins had shrunk by 23% since he'd taken over his current role. He didn't know any of this because he'd never bothered to look at the numbers. He'd just assumed the throne would be waiting whenever he was ready. Tomorrow he'd find out how wrong he was. My phone buzzed again. Eleanor Chin, change of plans. Board members want the shareholder meeting moved up. Can you join us tonight for a preliminary discussion? We're in the auxiliary conference room. I glanced around the table. No one was paying attention to me. No one ever did. On my way I typed back. I excused myself, claiming a phone call. My mother barely acknowledged my departure. My father didn't notice at all. The auxiliary conference room was on the other side of the building. A smaller, more private space used for sensitive meetings. When I arrived, I found 5 people waiting. Eleanor Chin, Robert Martinez, and 3 board members who'd been secretly briefed on my identity over the past 6 months. Ms. Walker, Eleanor said, rising to shake my hand. Thank you for coming. I apologize for the last-minute change. What's happened? The other board members are getting suspicious. This from David Okonkwo, the board's longest-serving member. Raymond's been asking questions about our majority shareholder. He wants to meet before the vote. Has he figured anything out? Not yet. But he knows something's off. The usual rubber stamp votes haven't been going his way lately. David's expression was grim. If we don't act soon, he might start digging. I considered the situation. My plan had always been to reveal myself at tomorrow's board meeting. A controlled environment where I could present the documentation and make my position clear. But if my father was already suspicious, what are you recommending? I asked. Eleanor and David exchanged looks. We think you should reveal your ownership tonight, Eleanor said. At the dinner. Before Raymond has a chance to investigate further. The documentation is ready, Robert added, producing a leather folder. Ownership records, proxy confirmations, the board's concerns about Marcus's performance. Everything you need. I thought about Marcus in the conference room, accepting congratulations he hadn't earned. About my father preparing to hand over a company he didn't realize he'd already lost. About my mother who had never once asked what I did for a living. Hey, I said. Let's do this. I returned to the conference room at 8:47 p.m., flanked by Eleanor Chin and David Okonkwo. Robert Martinez followed behind, carrying the documentation. The conversation stuttered to a halt as we entered. My father's expression shifted from confusion to annoyance. Natalie? What's going on? Who are these people? Raymond, Eleanor said smoothly, we apologize for the interruption. But there's a matter that requires the board's immediate attention. Now. My father's irritation was visible. We're in the middle of a family celebration. I'm afraid it can't wait. Eleanor gestured to the seats at the opposite end of the table. This concerns tomorrow's vote. The executives shifted uncomfortably. Marcus was frowning, clearly trying to figure out what was happening. My mother looked from me to Eleanor with growing confusion. Fine, my father said shortly. What is it? Eleanor took a deep breath. As you know, Walker Logistics' majority shareholder is a private investment firm called Apex Capital Holdings. They've owned 81% of the company's voting shares for the past 18 months. I'm aware. My father's tone was impatient. What does this have to do with tonight? The board has been in communication with Apex's principal owner regarding tomorrow's CEO appointment. Eleanor paused. She has concerns. She. My father's eyebrows shot up. The owner is a woman? Yes. Eleanor turned to look at me. The principal owner of Apex Capital Holdings and therefore the majority shareholder of Walker Logistics is your daughter. Natalie Walker. The silence was deafening. I watched it happen in slow motion. The way my father's face went blank, then red, then pale. The way Marcus's champagne glass slipped from his fingers and shattered against the mahogany table. The way my mother's mouth opened and closed without producing any sound. That's impossible, Marcus said. His voice came out strangled. Natalie doesn't have that kind of money. She posts selfies for a living. Ms. Walker's portfolio is valued at approximately $127 million, Robert said, stepping forward with the documentation. Apex Capital Holdings is just one of her investment vehicles. She also holds significant positions in 3 tech companies, 2 real estate development firms, and a logistics optimization platform that directly competes with Walker Logistics. Competes. My father found his voice. You're competing with your own family? Technically, I said calmly, you're competing with me. Streamline Systems has a 34% market share in regional logistics optimization. Walker Logistics has 12%. I paused. And falling. This doesn't make sense. Marcus was shaking his head, his face a mask of denial. You're not a businesswoman. You post on Instagram. My Instagram has 2.3 million followers, I said. It generates $840,000 annually in sponsored content and affiliate marketing. It's also a primary data collection tool for consumer trend analysis, which I license to major brands for an additional $1.2 million per year. I smiled politely. It's not playing entrepreneur, Marcus. It's market research. David Okonkwo cleared his throat. Ms. Walker, the board has reviewed your concerns about the proposed CEO appointment. We've prepared a summary of the relevant performance metrics. He placed a document on the table in front of my father. I watched him read it, watched his expression shift from confusion to disbelief to something that might have been horror. These numbers can't be right, my father said. Marcus's division has been performing. Marcus's division has underperformed projections for 6 consecutive quarters, I said. Client retention is down 31%. Operating costs are up 18%. 3 of your largest accounts have already begun conversations with Streamline Systems about transferring their business. You're poaching our clients? Marcus's voice cracked. I'm not poaching anyone. They came to me because your service levels have been declining for 18 months. Kept my voice level. That's not competition. That's consequences. My father slammed his palm on the table. This is ridiculous. You can't just waltz in here and... I can, I said quietly. I own 81% of this company. The board answers to me. And tomorrow they're going to vote on my recommendation for CEO, not yours. Your recommendation? Marcus was white. You're not seriously suggesting. I'm not taking the position myself if that's what you're worried about. I met my brother's eyes. I have better things to do than clean up your mess. But I'm also not handing the company to someone who's been running his division into the ground. Eleanor spoke up. The board has prepared a list of external candidates for the CEO position. Experienced executives with strong track records in logistics and supply chain management. Ms. Walker has reviewed them and approved 3 finalists. You're removing me? Marcus's voice was barely above a whisper. From my own family's company? I'm protecting my investment, I said. And the 2,000 employees who depend on this company for their livelihoods. They deserve leadership that actually understands the business. The immediate consequences began before I'd finished speaking. Marcus's phone started buzzing. Colleagues and subordinates who'd somehow already heard that something was wrong. He stared at the screen, then threw the phone on the table like it had betrayed him. The leadership team, David explained apologetically. We informed them of the situation 30 minutes ago. Company policy requires disclosure of material changes in ownership structure. You told my employees before you told me? My father's face was purple with rage. You're not an employee, Raymond. You're a shareholder, a minority shareholder. Eleanor's voice was professionally calm. Ms. Walker is the one who determines disclosure protocols. My mother finally found her voice. Natalie, this is insane. You can't do this to your family. After everything we've done for you. What have you done for me? The question came out quieter than I'd intended. Specifically, what have you ever done for me? My mother opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. I went to every one of Marcus's games, she finally said. Every award ceremony. Every. Marcus's events, I said. What about mine? Silence. My graduation. My scholarship awards? My first business sale. I shook my head. You weren't at any of them. You were too busy celebrating Marcus's participation trophies. The escalation continued over the next hour. News of the ownership reveal spread through the company like wildfire. Department heads began calling, not Marcus but Eleanor and David, asking about the implications for their positions. Several executives quietly excused themselves from the dinner, suddenly remembering urgent appointments elsewhere. At 10 o'clock my father's phone rang. His banker. The conversation was brief and one-sided. They're calling in the loans, he said numbly when he hung up. The personal guarantees I made for the company expansion. They want immediate repayment. That's $4.7 million, Marcus said. Dad, you don't have $4.7 million in liquid assets. I know. My father looked at me for the first time since the revelation. Really looked at me like he was seeing someone he'd never met before. You planned this. I didn't plan for the bank to call your loans, I said. But I'm not surprised. Banks get nervous when they realize their collateral is based on inflated performance projections. You're going to destroy us. I'm going to save the company. I stood gathering my things. What happens to you personally isn't my concern. Natalie, please. My mother was crying now. We're your parents. You can't just. I can, I said. And I will. I turned to Eleanor. The board meeting is still scheduled for 9 a.m.? Yes, Ms. Walker. We'll have everything prepared. The final consequence came as I was leaving. Robert Martinez stopped me at the door, his expression carefully neutral. Ms. Walker, there's one more item. The board's investigation into the discrepancies in Marcus's quarterly reports uncovered some irregularities. What kind of irregularities? The kind that suggest certain expenses were misclassified to hide cost overruns. Robert glanced at Marcus, who had gone even paler. The kind that might interest the SEC. Are you accusing me of fraud? Marcus's voice cracked. I'm not accusing anyone of anything. Robert's tone remained professional. I'm informing Ms. Walker that the board's fiduciary duty may require us to report these findings to the appropriate authorities. May require? I asked. That's your decision, Ms. Walker. As majority shareholder, you can instruct the board to conduct an internal review first, or proceed directly to external disclosure. I looked at Marcus, my brother who had spent 29 years being told he was special, who had been handed everything I'd ever had to fight for, who was now staring at me with something that looked almost like fear. Conduct the internal review first, I said. If the findings warrant external disclosure, proceed accordingly. I won't protect fraud, but I won't destroy someone's life without being certain either. You're still going to ruin me, Marcus said quietly. Even if you don't report me. You ruined yourself, Marcus. I'm just refusing to cover it up. I found my father in the parking lot at midnight, sitting on the hood of his Mercedes like a man who'd forgotten how to drive. The celebration banners still hung in the lobby windows behind him, advertising an announcement that would never happen. I built this company, he said without looking at me. 32 years. Everything I have. I know. And you just took it. Like it was nothing. It wasn't nothing. I leaned against the car next to him. It took me 5 years to acquire those shares. 5 years of patient, careful acquisition while you and Marcus weren't paying attention. Why? Finally he looked at me. His eyes were red, though whether from anger or grief or exhaustion I couldn't tell. What did I ever do to you that deserved this? I thought about how to answer. About all the years of being overlooked, dismissed, told to stay in my lane. About the spelling tests and the business notebooks and the marketing internship. About every moment I'd been told that I wasn't built for this world. You taught me something, I said finally. Every time you ignored me, every time you told me to leave business to Marcus, every time you acted like I didn't exist, you taught me how to be invisible. How to work without being noticed. How to build something in the shadows while everyone else was looking somewhere else. That's not what I meant to teach you. I know. I pushed off from the car. But it's what I learned. What happens now? The board votes tomorrow. An external CEO will be appointed. Marcus will be offered a severance package and a non-disclosure agreement. You'll retain your minority shares, but you won't have operational authority. I paused. If you cooperate with the transition, I'll consider helping with the bank situation. If you don't, you're on your own. That's not a choice. That's an ultimatum. It's more choice than you ever gave me. My mother appeared in the lobby doorway, Marcus behind her. They looked diminished somehow, smaller than they'd been just hours ago. Natalie, my mother called. Please. Can we talk about this? As a family. I turned to face them. My family. The people who had spent 29 years making sure I knew I didn't belong. We're not a family, I said quietly. We never were. A family supports each other. Believes in each other. Sees each other. I shook my head. You never saw me. Not once. Not until tonight when you had no choice. That's not fair. None of this is fair, Mom. Fair would have been coming to my graduation. Fair would have been asking about my business even once. Fair would have been treating me like I mattered as much as Marcus. I started walking toward my car. But fair isn't how this family works. So I made my own rules. Where are you going? Marcus's voice was hoarse. Home. I have a board meeting in the morning. You're really going through with this? Taking everything we built. I stopped and turned. My brother stood in the parking lot lights, looking younger than his 32 years, looking like a child who'd just realized the world didn't owe him anything. I'm not taking anything, Marcus. Already have it. I've had it for 18 months. I met his eyes. The question is what you're going to do now. Learn from this and build something real? Or spend the rest of your life complaining about how unfair it is that someone else succeeded? He didn't answer. I didn't expect him to. My car was waiting. A Tesla I'd bought 2 years ago, back when my parents thought I was wasting money on electric toy cars. I slid into the driver's seat and pulled out of the parking lot without looking back. Elena called before I'd gone 3 blocks. How did it go? About how I expected. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. They're shocked. Angry. My mother cried. My father tried to make me feel guilty. Did it work? No. I merged onto the highway, the city lights spreading out before me. I thought it might. I spent years wondering if I'd regret this moment. But I don't. I just feel tired. That's normal. You just upended 30 years of family dynamics in one evening. Elena paused. Are you okay? I will be. The board meeting tomorrow. Do you want me there? No. This is something I need to do myself. I smiled even though she couldn't see it. But thank you. For everything. You built this yourself, Nat. I just pointed you in the right direction. I hung up and drove in silence, watching the lights pass. The board vote happened at 9:17 a.m. the next morning. It was unanimous. The external CEO candidate I'd recommended was approved. Marcus was officially removed from his position. My father stepped down as chairman. I didn't celebrate. I just signed the documents and moved on to the next item on my agenda. 3 months later, Walker Logistics announced a 15% increase in quarterly profits under new leadership. Client retention stabilized. Operating costs normalized. The company my father had built was finally reaching its potential, just not the way he'd imagined. Marcus took a job at a small logistics firm in another city. He didn't speak to me before he left, but I heard through shared connections that he was doing okay. Learning maybe. Growing possibly. My parents sent a letter 6 months after the board meeting. It was 3 pages long, full of explanations and justifications and something that almost resembled apology. They wanted to reconnect. To understand. To be a family again. I read it once then filed it away. Some doors once closed can't be reopened. Some relationships once revealed for what they are, can't be rebuilt on new foundations. And some people, no matter how many chances they're given, will never see you as anything other than what they've decided you are. I built my empire in the shadows, invisible and overlooked. And when I finally stepped into the light, I discovered something my family had never understood. The people they dismiss are often the ones they should fear most. I posted about it on Instagram the next day. A simple photo of the sunrise over the city with a caption that read, "The best revenge is success. The best success is one you build yourself." It got 847,000 likes. Marcus, I'm told, saw it. He didn't comment.